An Ukrainian serviceman walks in a trench by a sort of mannequin as he stands at his post on the front line with Russia-backed separatists near the town of Zolote in the Lugansk region on April 8, 2021. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was traveling to the country's eastern front line on April 8, 2021, after a surge in clashes with separatist forces and a spike in tensions with Moscow. Fighting between the Ukrainian army and separatists has intensified in recent weeks, raising fears of a major escalation in the long-running conflict over the mainly Russian-speaking Donbas region. Bremmer is a foreign affairs columnist and editor-at-large at Time. He is the president of Eurasia Group, a political risk consultancy, and GZERO Media, a company dedicated to providing intelligent and engaging coverage of international affairs. He teaches applied geopolitics at Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs, and his most recent book is Us versus Them: The Failure of Globalism. After a lull in fighting since last July, the last few weeks have seen an outbreak of violence along the ceasefire line separating the breakaway regions of eastern Ukraine with the rest of the country, prompting Moscow to start massing troops along Ukraine's border. Is it a prelude to war? Last summer, Russia and Ukraine agreed to better enforce a shaky ceasefire over the fighting that has gripped eastern Ukraine, specifically the separatist enclaves in parts of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, since 2014. Russia has been supporting the secessionists' movements in Donetsk and Luhansk, where 14,000+ people have died in the fighting to date. Why? Because Ukraine is a strategically critical country that Moscow believes it needs to keep under its influence. Back in 2014, Ukraine was setting its sights westwards toward the EU and NATO, which Russian President Vladimir Putin regarded as an existential threat to Moscow. Hence the occupation of Crimea and the fueling of independence movements in Donetsk and Luhansk. Ukraine still isn't a member of either the EU or NATO, so Russia's gambits have worked in that regard, but that success has come at a cost. Russia has been under onerous energy, defense and financial sanctions from the West ever since. So what is Russia actually gunning for? For Moscow, the intention is to have the two separatist regions hold local elections and govern themselves, but not break away from Ukraine completely. Moscow wants the territories to remain semi-independent so they can be used by Russia to influence political developments within Ukraine, such as potentially blocking any moves to join NATO. Russia's ultimate goal is that this quasi-independent status gets enshrined in Ukraine's constitution. Unsurprisingly, that's a non-starter for many of Ukraine's most prominent political leaders, including former comedian and current President Volodymyr Zelensky. In 2019, Zelensky used an aggressive anti-establishment platform to win the country's presidency, but he also made ending the war in eastern Ukraine a central campaign pledge. Earlier in his administration, he insisted that Russia pull its troops from within Ukraine's borders before moving forward with any longer-term political solution. That was smart politics. There's not much appetite in Ukraine for appeasing Russian aggression, but Zelensky has been unable to deliver on his promise of ending the violence. There have been 5 Ukrainian soldier casualties over the last week according to the White House, and Russian troop movements of late signals that the July 2020 ceasefire deal will be tested in the coming few weeks. What changed? Things had been quiet in recent months, a short-term reprieve for Zelensky given the lack of casualties, but a long-term problem, since no progress was being made towards ending the conflict. With President Joe Biden's move into the White House, Zelensky began making overtures to get the Biden administration more directly involved in the stalemate, but, given all the other crises the Biden administration inherited, that was a long shot. Still, more US involvement is the last thing Putin wants. Putin likely decided a show of force would dissuade the US from interfering too much, while at the same time hoping the pressure would get Ukraine's leadership moving toward negotiating a political settlement to the conflict even without Russia withdrawing its forces. Russia claims it's the Ukrainians who provoked them with aggressive actions and has warned NATO from interfering. And while Zelensky asked NATO just this week for an action plan that would allow Ukraine to join NATO down the line, a move sure to aggravate Putin even more, for the time being, NATO is staying out of the fray.